Welcome to the Pin Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pin Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome to the Pin Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about flowing with purpose. And I have with me today Mr. Jesse Stock, who is the Executive Director of Partners for Clean Streams. He is also a nonprofit veteran with more than 23 years of experience in program management, grant making, fundraising, volunteer and board management, and so much more. He is also retired from the Army Reserves with more than 23 years of service and is a two-time recipient of the Bronze Star. So we'll be talking about that as well. So without further ado, welcome, Jesse.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dr. Gore.
Excellent. So we'll get right into it. There's so much going on in your bio, and you've done so much great work. I really wanted to get into your experience, especially with working with nonprofit. And you've made a leap from, again, being a veteran in the military and coming in and actually working on Clean Streams. So before we get into Clean Streams, I'd say thank you for your service. And can you talk a little bit about how you use some of those skills from one to the other?
Yeah, first I'd like to give credit to two very strong women in my life that set a standard for how we can be in community. Both my wife and my mother, very strong individuals and always giving back to their community. And I think that when we're shown or introduced like to be best version of ourselves and put ourselves out there, whether it be uncertain, that you can learn a lot about yourself by getting out there and doing something, being the change you want to see in the world. And I got two supportive partners that really kind of guide me. They're champions, and I try to keep up with them.
Yeah, so those are in your life that, they make a difference, and that's great. That's awesome. So, you know what? I'll go right into your Partners for Clean Streams. First, I'm going to ask you, can you explain a little bit about that and then the power of that organization?
Yeah, so Partners of a Clean Stream was founded in 2007. We're a grassroots nonprofit organization that empowers our community to pick up and become more aware of the water issues that are in Northwest Ohio. So we organize river cleanups, we do outreach and education, we do preventive work, but we invite places and people in our community to engage in that, to create a sense of place and educate them about why it's important that we pay attention to water issues. Ultimately, if they participate, we believe that that's where we can really find some long-term environmental change that is needed. Yeah, that's the mission. Inviting people into place, taking ownership, and doing something about the environment on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you've got a lot going on with the waterways and having partners. When you say partners, it's really, you're not doing it alone. You have a number of organizations that are with you.
Yeah, at a local level, we work with local municipals, but we also work with state agencies like the Ohio EPA, and we recently received a grant from the US EPA. So we will work at all levels, both at the local level and even at the individual and the family, at the neighborhood association level. We try to invite in those people and create a sense of place, right? So we're living here, we take a responsibility in addressing the environment. And that's, for me, where the real change happens. Yes, many of the water concerns that we are focused on are very large and difficult to address, that ultimately may lead to a need for a policy change, but we believe that it starts with creating awareness at a local level, at a grassroots level.
Mm-hmm. You talk about really volunteering. That's what a lot of your organization relies on, and that's selfless service. And, how do you instill that mindset in teams and volunteers for Partners at Clean Streams? I mean, how are you doing that, and how do you encourage others to get others motivated to help?
Yeah, it's a little unique in the sense that I like to think about it as there's something broader going on than myself. And I try to understand maybe perhaps where the understanding of the volunteers' awareness of the world is. And maybe they just haven't done volunteering work at all before. Maybe it's their first time, and I try to meet them where they're at. I also try to engage them in the process of questioning and dialogue. So instead of addressing just a lot of facts about the importance of water and how much is going to your drinking water and protecting that, but maybe starting with, do you think it's okay that this is here in the waterway? And oftentimes we are addressing plastic within this area. So understanding where they're coming from first and trying to broaden that perspective so that they recognize that their service is contributing to not only to the environment, but to their community. And the work that we do is very visible. So when you pull out 100 pounds of trash, like, you can be proud of that. And half of our youth, or half of our volunteer base, is younger than 18. Mm-hmm. So if I tell you that I have 1,000 volunteers that show up on an annual basis on a one-day event, and half of them are youth, that for me gives me hope. And it gives me hope for the future, that like maybe the work we're doing is purposeful work, and that they will be the change. They think about different. In fact, I just did a cleanup event, and there was a fifth grader. You know the show maybe about Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I don't know if they got my footnotes about what I was going to talk about, but I would ask them about what they can do in their own lives, in their own households. And she was like, well, when I fertilize our yard, and this is a fifth grader, I'm like, okay, tell me more. Like, well, it needs to be done in such a way that it doesn't go into the storm drains. And I'm like, okay, something is happening within our work and in the environment. Maybe it's in the school system, but we're starting to hear the same kind of narrative and understanding that we have, an understanding of the situation and how we contribute to it. And that's where real meaningful change happens. Yes, adults are important. They provide the transportation, they show up, they volunteer as well. But it really gives me pride to know that so many kids are getting out and getting involved.
That's amazing that you've got a fifth grader that is starting to know and understand where they fall with how to go about it the right way and not just winging it. There's one thing I would say from leadership, your background is so impressive, and you're fighting a waterway war, but you've actually been in war and done that. Can you talk about how you've taken those leadership traits to motivate? Again, you had individuals that you worked alongside of, and how you are doing it to try to get motivating others.
Well, I'll try to give you the short, abbreviated version. So having traveled the world and visited places that are in not a good state, third world locations where they are struggling to survive. They don't have fresh water. They don't have a meal at the end of the day. They don't have shelter. And the things that we take for granted really can provide some perspective on the privilege that we have as a country. And it's one that I think I identified with while overseas. Having grown up in poverty, I thought, gosh, poverty in southeastern Ohio doesn't look any different than in Egypt or Afghanistan or Iraq. People are trying to survive. And that calling gave me a sense of purpose while I was there, that I knew that serving the global needs was something that could be the grounding and the foundation for me to do it for an extended period of time. And you mentioned 23 years, but I oftentimes go back to what are the most meaningful or impactful time that I spent overseas. And on Sundays, I would volunteer my time after working 17-hour days to deliver clothes to an orphanage in Afghanistan. And seeing the kids there gave me what I needed. Yes, it's having a connection to home, but knowing that it was worth it, knowing that those kids needed an opportunity to have a safe place. So when I think about those things, the awareness of culture, of working with communities that are not starting all at the same place. You don't choose where you're born and your circumstances, but we all, in my mind, deserve a quality of life. And whether that was in the military or in my volunteer service or the role models that I aspire to be, I believe that sacrifice that we make, that selfless service, is one that is really rewarding and gratifying when you know you've done a good job. So I would show up every day and do my best and try to encourage a team environment that was supportive, that we knew that we were all trying to have the same goal, not only make our time there easy as it could be, but to also return home so we could be with our families. And I just kept that at the center of my value system of like, I just need to approach every day as one is giving back.
Can you talk a little bit more about that giving back that you just said, the characteristics that you just mentioned, like you being selfless, and again, talking about team? What would you say is the top 3 characteristics of a most effective leader?
There are so many that I learned, and the value system in the military is really, I think I personify a number of things. I bought in, if you will, to that. But when asked that question, I think integrity really becomes one of the things that I think is fundamental to a leader. Without integrity, there is no trust. Trust is one of the hardest currencies in leadership to earn, and it's the quickest to lose. And I think that if you betray somebody's trust, it's a long road to repair that. And yeah, I think that being deserving of people's respect requires integrity in every aspect of your life. And it doesn't mean that we don't fail or make mistakes, but owning those mistakes and moving past them and recognizing that others could also requires a fair amount of understanding and self-awareness, but it starts with integrity at the forefront. I also think it requires something authenticity. So if you're not true to yourself, if you're not aware of how you're behaving in the world, I think that there's a fair amount of self-deception and a lack of awareness that, you can't be your true self in this world if you are not true to yourself. And I like to think I'm an easygoing guy, that I like to have fun, and that there's more to me than just a job. I like things in life. I like my family. I like talking about them. And I find that when I can behave as normal and I don't have to code switch or behave a certain way in an environment, I feel more comfortable. I feel understood. I feel heard. And when I'm allowed to interact, that's when I actually enjoy things the most. And that's my genuine, that's my authentic self in leadership. And I try to I don't manage my team. So I practice the leadership principle of being authentic and understanding that we're all trying to accomplish something in life, that you want to pay your bills, I want to pay my bills, I want to go to see shows and music and spend time with my family, but all that requires is a supportive environment. And that comes natural to me, and hopefully my small team enjoys it, because I don't know that I want to be anything but that at this point in my life.
Can you talk a little bit more about that with the fact that you've got this team? Because there comes a time when within your team, you may have a disagreement, right? You have a common goal, but not everybody agrees on how to get to that goal. What do you do to manage the team, because you're still the leader, when not everybody agrees on the pathway to get there?
Yeah, every organization is a little bit different, and every environment's a little bit different. What I find is that genuine first step is understand perspective of the team. I need their participation in the process and deciding how we should be approaching, and I don't want to assume that I actually know how they arrived at that thought process. So I like to engage people first in dialogue and understanding, and I do that through inquiry and asking, like, help me understand why you think that. Where did you arrive at? Is it just a feeling? Are you thinking? Have you read something? Yeah, bring in your experiences into that process so we can actually see what's at the middle, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, there are times where I have to make the financial decision to say what we can and cannot do to obligate our limited staff that we have, but it will not be without other people's opinion. And that's kind of a new process for our younger generations to be engaged. It's one that's definitely not in the military. It's authoritative, but I find that we can really gain more. What's to lose by having more people participate in the decision-making process? It makes people more capable leaders, critical thinkers. They understand why choices are made and decisions are being made when they're involved in that. Mm-hmm. So if we want to grow your staff, and I don't want to work in the nonprofit sector for the rest of my life. I do want to retire.
What's the problem with the nonprofit?
Yeah. So, but my thought process of decision-making in the business is to involve first, so that I don't have to be there for the next past my retirement. That we are bringing people into the fold and creating a pipeline of future leaders when we dialogue them and help them understand the decision making and why we approach business in certain ways.
Okay, that's excellent. Excellent. So this is a fun question for you: is what are you reading and what are you watching? What do you do and your pastime? I know you're not just reading about cleaning the waterways. You've got to be in our military, right?
No. I think it's great that you asked that question because life should be full of learning and continued learning. I'm not reading a lot. I'm listening to podcasts and I'm watching an occasional TV show, most of it recreational, but there are some things that I think that are pretty informative. So I don't want to repeat history, so I try to read significant pieces that capture it. And then there's Man's Search for Purpose. It's about a psychiatrist that was in the Holocaust and survived, but he actually documented his experience. And I thought it was really pretty powerful about when his life was on the line and the people around him passing and how they survived through that trauma. I thought it was really pretty powerful. For recreation, Wheel of Time, fantasy to escape. And then, it's 300 hours plus. And I'm trying to do a revisit to something I enjoyed when I was a kid. So it's bringing back some storytelling that I was like, oh gosh, I really loved this when I was a kid. Gosh, I listened to This American Life. I really enjoy hearing about other people's experience that I have no proximity to, because there's a lot of commonality in our lives and our goals and our wishes. And people, they often talk either like, what would you share with your kid, or what would you tell your parent or your grandparent about what they did in their lives? And I just find that to be incredibly powerful.
Excellent.
Those are I consume a lot, but most of it just leisure.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking about Partners in Clean Streams, the importance of keeping our waterways clean. And for those that are listening in different parts of the world right now, again, water is precious, and making sure that they can do their part in keeping the streams clean where they are. So thank you so very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Gore.
And thank you for our listeners for sharing the show and liking it and talking about it. And again, we appreciate any input that you would have. You can send that to us at info@mazeassociatesltd.com. And we'd like to also thank our sponsor, Miss Jennifer Penzishin, Edward Jones, financial advisor, who has added so much guidance in the world of financial advising to so many people. And we thank her for her sponsorship in the show. So, of course, until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Maze & Associates Ltd, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.mazeassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.